welcome to another episode of Table Talk. I do apologize, feels like a long while since our last episode, but today we're here to share our final review for G.I. Joe Battle for the Arctic Circle, which is powered by the Axis and Allies engine. This is from the folks at Renegade and Avalon Hill. Basically, they teamed up to put this together. Renegade has been making Axis and Allies for quite a while. I don't remember if it explained Avalon Hill's part of this, but I do know that they have some pretty cool stuff out there. And, you know, from a diehard G.I. Joe fan, this ranks right up there too. So let's go and get started. So as we've discussed before, you know, we have our main map. I do really like the durability of it. It's really nice and thick. Now, that being said, the ice tiles that basically allow you to create land bridges with the weather dominator, those are very thin and flimsy. So basically the longevity of use for them, the more you play this edition of the game, you know, those are definitely gonna get warped and kind of get messed up. And so I do wish that they were a little bit thicker. You know, same with the card for the weather dominator. Now the leader cards, those are a much more durable thickness, and so I think those are acceptable. I still would have liked them a little bit thicker just for further durability, but it was not as necessary as for these. Now, the game as a whole, you know, as I mentioned, it is built on the Axis and Allies engine. The design of the game really is geared more for smaller games, just because, you know, it is a condensed map. A much smaller area to play on. You know, it's only 2 to 4 players, which I believe the original Axis and Allies was more than that. But where Axis and Allies, you know, you play different colors for, you know, different armies. With this, you have really 2 teams. You're either G.I. Joe or your Cobra. That means, you know, if you're playing 4 players, you have 2 G.I. Joe teams and 2 Cobra teams working together, and in order to defeat their opponents. And so I really like that aspect. You know, it forces you to work as a team when you're playing in bigger groups. Now, the turns themselves are much shorter, and I think that definitely is a benefit there, especially for newer players. This game really feels like like it's basically optimized for those newer players to get in shorter games, so that way they kind of get a taste for the mechanics itself. But the majority of the mechanics do still remain the same. And follow that. Now, a regular game, I remember Axis and Allies, the original, you know, taking 2+ hours on average. I think the shortest game I remember having was like 3 hours. And, you know, me being in junior high at the time, that was a really long time. So, you know, definitely having this, you know, being approximately 90 minutes definitely makes it more accessible to new players, because most new players do not want to play a game that's going to take them most of their day, you know. Now, it does have 3 scenarios right out of the box. Now, I do hope that they expand on that, maybe come out with an additional book, maybe even an additional map to do different areas with, and give you more opportunities with that, to have it more narrative play. Like this is kind of centered around with the overall battle and the weather dominator centric piece of it. You know, with the weather dominator, that being said, like I said, there are the ice hexes, and you can use these to create land bridges, which means it really opens up the game mechanically to allow you to have now new ways of getting across the map and attacking your opponents, where, you know, before you might not have had that same ability. And, one thing I always remembered is, Risk was more of a dice roll centered game that was really more about the rolls themselves than tactics, where Axis and Allies, while it still had dice rolls and stuff, you had to have decent tactics to be very successful at the game consistently. Where if you're doing it and you have, poor planning ahead of time, and the other person does not, they're going to take advantage of you and usually wipe the floor with you much faster. And having it at the smaller scale allows you to streamline that process and basically make the turns themselves shorter, which makes the whole game itself much more dynamic. Now, each commander does have different powers, as you can see on the bottom. Like with Keelhaul, you can deploy one air unit to a hex where you control an aircraft carrier, and you may deploy one land unit hex where you control a cruiser. Snow Job, your troopers have move 2 during non-combat movement. So if you're playing one-on-one, depending on how you want to play, one power might be more beneficial to you than the other. And from what I recall, because it has been literally decades since I've played an Axis and Allied game before this, is that you didn't have commanders other than just, you, yourself, and everyone had the same abilities from there. Now, with this, it is more centered across, all elements of the battle, so air, land, sea, where my memory of classic Axis and Allies, it's typically by land only. Maybe air mixed in, but not all three. Now, I could be wrong on that one. Please correct me if I am, but that's just my memory because, like I said, it's been decades since the last time I played the classic. Now, one thing that you can do is with cruisers and with the planes, there's ice-breaking rules so that way, and dive bombing that you can do to basically break up those ice bridges as well, so that way you can eliminate travel paths to then make it easier to do your strategies and your overall gameplay that you want to do. And now, one thing I don't remember you having the ability to do in the original is banking points. So your reinforcement points in this one, you can bank up to 4 reinforcement points. That way, if you're looking to do a bigger reinforcement later on and do it more strategically, you can by banking those from one turn to the next. So that way you can actually plan ahead and make sure that you're ready to go. Now, for those that have played the original more recently and are more used to the rules, there is a what's changed section in the rule book that basically covers the differences in overall mechanics. So that way, you have a quick and easy guide to point you in the right direction if you want to basically start a faster game with a group that's already experienced in Axis and Allies. Now, for somebody like me, even if this was just classic Axis and Allies with a G.I. Joe skin on it, that would still appeal to me because I do love G.I. Joe pretty much in everything. You guys have probably seen our RPG-related videos on that, and as well as deck building game, things like that. The game itself, going beyond and actually kind of incorporating some of those storylines as well, really adds to that for me. Now, the price itself is pretty reasonable, around $60 US. And from what I've seen online, so far the overall sentiment has been pretty good, especially among groups that are looking for 4-player games as well. And for those that struggle with reading rule books, like myself who have ADHD, that, have trouble retaining the page that you're reading as you're going, you're definitely going to have a much easier time with that. And because they have official learn how to play videos and content online, and inserts like this also give you a streamlined version as well. make that whole process much easier. And overall, it's quite accessible, just as far as where you can get it. Where classic Axis and Allies, I typically don't see that in stores much. Where with this one, with the obvious online retailers, Renegade Games, Amazon, Miniature Market, you have places like Walmart as well, and I believe Axis and Allies is available through them too. But it's going to be a lot easier to find, and with the lower cost as well, be much more accessible for those players. Now, some overall issues with it, some people might think that, this, because of the few changes and differences between this and regular, that it really is just a reskin, and for them, it's not going to be worth it. Like I said, I'm different, because I would pretty much skin almost every board game in G.I. Joe. I mean, I even have a G.I. Joe Monopoly. And so, that for me is not an issue. Where, with the reduced map and stuff, because of the tighter game and stuff, the scale of the game as a whole definitely can feel less epic for some people, just because the overall scope is not as encompassing. Where normally you're battling over the entire world, here you're just battling over one segment of it. And so, without that scale, I think it kind of lessens some of that impact. And now, I haven't really noticed this much, but I have seen online some people complaining about the Rattler from Cobra basically feeling a little too overpowered. Now, I of course used it and myself, but I relied more on my land troops more than air, and because I was more ground focused, I didn't really notice the superiority that everyone was talking about. And with the limited, troop types, I don't remember there being a lot of different options with Classic, but there aren't that many options here, and overall it is just a few of each, so it does kind of limit how many you can put on the board. So I think having more pieces definitely would have been a benefit. But you want to make sure that you are playing really an even number of teams, so either 2 or 4, just to make the game more balanced. Where doing a 30-person team, it can definitely be a lot more one-sided with the team that has 2, because they are working together. And the biggest complaint there being that those allies aren't able to share resources. So like if one of the players has an abundance and doesn't really know how to apply all of it, and the other player might be more skilled on their same team, they can't make use of it other than just making some suggestions on what they can do. Now, looking at the models themselves, they are quite simple, nothing super fancy. It is going to be a little difficult to get much detail on there and give them like a thorough paint job, which I want to do, but because of that lack of detail, it kind of feels like it might be more of a waste to do that. And one of the biggest complaints I've seen though online is that that there is no solo mode. Now, I'm sure someone out there's probably devised a way for them to play solo as well themselves, but officially there is not an option listed. But overall, I think that this edition of the game is great. I thoroughly liked it, but I've always been a big fan of Axis and Allies, and pretty much, again, anything with a G.I. Joe skin on it is an absolute win for me. And I think that the team at Renegade and Avalon Hill working together, they did a fantastic job on this, and I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing some sequels to this where we see some other notable modes or storylines being picked up and used for this kind of gameplay to further expand on it. So maybe connecting the maps would make for that grand overall battle type thing. Hopefully something like that to come. But if this just remains to be the only one, I think it's a great way to go, especially since I mostly play with my kids, and when I play with them, they're not going to want to invest the full time sink of a full Axis and Allies game. And so this was much easier to introduce them to for the entire franchise and overall mechanics to have a better experience with. So, for those of you with families that typically only play with your family, this is probably going to be a better way to go than the traditional Axis and Allies. But that's it for today. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. And for me, I definitely give this 2 enthusiastic thumbs up and can't wait to play it again and basically get revenge on the Joes for winning, because my daughter thoroughly stomped me. But if it's to be, it's to be. So catch you guys all next time. Thank you again, as always, for watching.
Now I'm set, painting minis with no regret. Set up fast, tear down clean. It's the slickest station I've ever seen. Whether Renegade or Hammer, Walking Dead or Apex, cream trophies, the kit that clears the specs. No clutter, no stress, just pop and play. Take your squad and save the day, babe. I've tried the rest, but this one slays. From dungeon crawlers to sci-fi rays, it's my go-to. My tabletop gem, crew trophies, the kit, yes ma'am. So if you're a hobbyist like me, here's the link to paint stress free. Join the fun, let your colors run free. Whether they're Baby or Hammer, The Walking Dead or Apex, crew trophies, the kit that clears the specs. No clutter, no stress, just pop and play. Put your squad and save the day. I've tried the rest, but this one slays. From dungeon crawlers to sci-fi rays, it's my go-to. My tabletop gem, crew trophies, the kit, yes ma'am. So if you're a hobbyist like me, here's the link to paint stress free. Join the fun,